Welcome back to another episode of Cape Ann Today. I'm speaking to the Gloucester Times reporters, Stephen Hagan and Ethan Foreman. Hi, you guys. How are you?
Hi, hello, Heather.
Hey, Heather.
Hi. So, Stephen, let's start with you. And we're going to save it for last, but some breaking news. But first of all, let's start with covering the Rockport debate that happened this week.
Yeah, the Rockport debate was held at the Rockport Public Library on Tuesday. It had all four candidates for select board: Ross Brackett, Paul Murphy, Frank Favaloro, and John Jack Porter. Brackett and Murphy are the incumbents. Favaloro, Porter are former firefighters. They're the challengers. Um, Interesting experience. The debate was held in the Brennan room at the library, which is not a giant room, but there were about approximately 100 people in there that jammed in. And yeah, it was pretty cool. And one of the debaters, one of the candidates, was not present physically. He was available via a Zoom call, and that was a John Jack Porter. He had contracted COVID-19, and so he was still part of the debate. And you know, they were the debate got off to a rocky start, not because of the candidates or anything. It was just the technical issues trying to there was massive audio feedback, and took a while, fits and starts, to get things going, but eventually got by the way, the debate was sponsored by the Cape Ann League of Women Voters, so very good organization.
And also, let's just say
yeah,
it was recorded by 1623 Studios.
yes, it was, and they're broadcasting it several times up till the election. They lasted about an hour. Basically, they talked about a plethora of issues. One that comes to mind is they talked. The question was put to them about how they would spend the ARPA funds, the federal ARPA funds. That's the American Rescue Plan funds that were generated out of the COVID. And you know, their answers, I mean, I'm not going to break it down. You can read the story in the Gloucester Daily Times, but basically they wanted to fund schools, issues regarding anything to do with the waterfront, including people that work on the waterfront, and other infrastructure needs in town. But they're going to actually, what they're doing is pretty smart. The town, they're sending out a survey apparently to ask people, the residents, how they feel the funds should be spent. So
I did read your article. It was really good. And unfortunately, I did not have a chance to watch the debate, and I will also watch that. But I understand there were 4 questions put, and the questions were formed by the League of Women Voters.
That's right. They were, and they were not, they were shared with me moments before the debate, but they were not, the candidates didn't know what they would be. There were no opening statements. There were closing statements by all 4 candidates.
Did the candidates seem prepared to answer those questions? I saw the answers in your story, and they all looked really reasonable and similar also. But were they thrown at all? Were they comfortable?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll watch the debate. I think
I'm not going to be specific. I mean, you know, I thought it was a great event. It was, you know, it really was a good show, and I'm not just speaking from high on my pedestal here. I think it was a good show of democracy in action, and how it was very civil, very considerate, and again, bravo to the the Cape Ann League of Women Voters. They did a marvelous job sponsoring the debate.
Yeah, and congratulations to Rockport citizens for showing up. And how
Yeah.
the audience, how did they, was everything friendly and nice and I mean, I can't imagine.
Well, I guess one little, not so much about the debate specific, but the one thing that was interesting when they were struggling to get things going, what was happening, because of the Porter being available on a Zoom call, they were having trouble with the audio. There's tremendous feedback, blah, 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 blah. And the tech people from 1624, they were struggling to get it going, as is found in New England towns, democracy was definitely in action because there were a lot of suggestions from the audience about how they should mute this and turn this up and balance this, and it was very, there was a real sense of family or community there, I guess.
Excellent.
Maybe I'm being a little naive, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other story that I wanted to mention covered a select board meeting in Manchester. There is going to be a grant application to the state board of library trustees to study possible expansion at the Manchester by the Sea Public Library. Rick Rogers, he's the chair of the Manchester by the Sea Library trustees. He basically, there are no definitive plans, but he wants to get the ball rolling. The library is beautiful. It's a gorgeous. I think it was built in the early 1800s. Actually, it housed soldiers for a time until the last soldier died. I think from either the Great War or the first World War One, until that soldier died in the middle part of last century.
Do you mean they actually lived there, Stephen?
Yeah, I gather there were a few that lived there, and then the last one died, and then they turned it into library use. It's a beautiful library, but it's quite small. So they want to bring it up to date, and bravo to the folks in Manchester for doing that. Last story, pivoting back to Rockport. There is a
this is the breaking news, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. The house at Andrews Point, 18 Long Branch Avenue, owned by Elizabeth Fisher. There are two lawsuits. She is contending. There's a path. It's part of the Atlantic path that goes through Andrews Point, which is basically her property. She wanted to limit access to the public to the path, and there have been many people who in Rockport and beyond who have used the path for a long time. That it's been a object of contention for quite a while. Several weeks ago, there was a meeting at the Wendover Performing Arts Center to gather people together to meet with the Assistant Attorney General Kendra Sheriff and share their evidence, testimony, photographs, other documentation that showed that they have used the path for a long time. So the question of the lawsuit, it wasn't answered in my article that you'll read, but it's definitely a question of whether or not the lawsuit shall proceed or not.
Wait, you haven't told us the punchline. What is happening with?
Oh, I didn't. I'm so sorry. She's Elizabeth Fisher has apparently placed her house on the market for sale.
Okay, so
Sunday.
So we don't understand what will happen to those lawsuits now that she's actually putting the house on the market, and we understand with the intention of leaving Rockport or leaving that house at least. Yeah. Okay.
I suppose.
All right. Well, that's a really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting in the sense that it begs the question, not just at Andrews Point, but anybody that owns property along the seaside, and whether or not the public has a right to access of the beach area in front of their homes. In the case of Elizabeth Fisher, there's not so much beach there; it's all rock, but there is a path that's been in place for approximately 100 years, many decades, I will say that, that the public has used, and it does cross her property. So that's the conundrum right there. The state is, I'm sorry?
There's been this traditional right of way that is a legal right of way that was established by the town, I understand, to provide access to the waterfront for the community.
Read my story.
Okay, all right. Is that
I don't want to give away the farm, not just yet.
Okay, all right. So your story is in the paper. We're doing this recording on Thursday, so your story will be in the paper Friday, right?
I believe so. I'm not going to guarantee it.
Okay. Could you just tell us what are the details of the lawsuit? Who is suing whom?
Well, it's been a long time since I was in law school at Harvard, but no, I can't. I know that I've been kind of general about this. The lawsuit just claims that the property should not be allowed for use by the public. I don't know that anybody in the lawsuit is suing another party.
Okay.
But one of the attorneys I spoke to, who formally has nothing to do with this case, said that, and people in Rockport will recognize this attorney when they read my story, said that it's always better for two parties that are contesting any issue to amicably resolve their issues before it goes to court, before the expense of the time and the money during lawsuits. But that didn't happen in this case.
So
But the result of the lawsuit, I don't know at this point.
okay, but the two parties are Elizabeth Fisher and the town of Rockport?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to say. I'm very, very uneasy about saying exactly who the different parties are in the lawsuit.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. It's
You're
still
welcome.
an interesting new phase in this story that house is going on the market. So thanks for that. And thanks for all your stories. Ethan, what's
You're
going
welcome.
on in the city of Gloucester this week?
Hey Heather, what was going on oh God, what day was that? Sunday?
Sunday. Yeah.
God, I can't keep the days straight. Anyway, congratulations. The Meeting House Foundation at the Unitarian Church held a screening of The Color of Light, all 11 episodes, and that was really great because you can watch one, you can watch them online through YouTube and 1623 Studios, but seeing them all in their continuing from the first to the last really gives you a sense of the interconnectivity of artists on Cape Ann. And it was about 100 people there, and you can watch a replay of this, I believe, through 1623 Studios on YouTube. I highly recommend watching it straight through. It was a delight. I brought my wife, and we had a great time, and we were very inspired by the art that we saw and the beauty of Cape Ann. But I want to ask you, because you're always asking me questions, but do you have a favorite one?
Oh, no, I don't. I think I said in the introduction to the talk that every artist I start to work on becomes my favorite. So I guess Nubara Alexanian was the very last one I did. So he's my current favorite, but I'm starting a new one on a woman named Anna Coleman Watts Ladd. So she might be my next favorite.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So afterwards we went out to eat at the 1609. We had a little treat.
Oh, at the Beauport? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you this. Do you like haddock?
I love haddock. I particularly love Gloucester haddock.
Well, there's a problem with haddock. The Fisheries Management Council asked for a limit, a catch limit that apparently might be too low, based on the science, based on stock assessments for the haddock. And when you set an assessment for a fish too low, if the fishermen keep catching that fish, shuts down the entire fishery, which it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So the New England Fishery Management Council, at their recent meeting in Mystic, Connecticut, asked for an emergency action to NOAA, sort of sidestepping their very long process to get these framework adjustments in place, and saying, "Hey, we gotta up the quota a little bit." And I'm not going to get into the math, but looking at fishing mortality and all that good stuff, they are asking NOAA to increase the catch limit for commercial, and basically for the fishery, for the haddock fishery. It's really interesting too if you think about it. You want to go and fish and catch fish, and you think that's great, but if you catch too much and your quota is gone, you have to go and you have to lease it or get it somewhere else, and you don't make
What
any
about
money.
fishing, right?
You don't make any money. Or, if the fishery catches too much, everything you're catching is going to that quota. And if you catch too much, you can't avoid not catching certain kinds of fish
So
and targeting species. So effectively, if once that quota is hit, it shuts down the season. And they were thinking that based on this year's assessment, the fishery could shut down as early as August. The fishing year begins in May. The new fishing year for 2023 begins May 1st, and they could see the haddock fishery shut down by August to December. What are you going to do? So it's a big problem, especially for the dayboat fishermen. One of our local fishermen, Joe Orlando, caught in two tows, a half a day's worth of fishing, almost what would be equal to his entire quota for the fishing year 2023. The fish are jumping into the nets and they can't make money. So it's a big problem. So they did the emergency action basically sort of increases is asking for an increase in the catch limit to carry them through later in the year.
So when will the fishermen find out about that action?
We don't know. I mean, NOAA doesn't have to do anything. They could make their own regulation. So I think we'll learn from the Fishery Management Council is local to Newburyport. NOAA, it's GARFO, the Greater Atlantic. I can never get that right. So the Greater GARFO is located in Gloucester. I think we'll know. But the problem is that it's not just like haddock. It's once you reach that quota for haddock, then you can't target other species because you're still catching haddock.
Right.
Very hard. I guess it's a very episodic stock. They call it episodic. There's a big year in 2013. There's a big year in, I guess, in 2020. And, so not entirely on the fishery science. I'm not a biologist here.
Well, it's very complicated.
It's very complicated, but I think the issue is they were concerned, the council was concerned about the economic harm that could happen to the fishery, to the local fishermen here, and that was their big overriding concern and asking for that emergency action.
And can you tell us how important the haddock catch is to the city of Gloucester?
Well, I can't say how important it is to the city of Gloucester, but I think what it is, it's what they can catch. Cod is gone. They were talking about flats. There's no market for the certain fish, so haddock was really what they were catching, and it seemed to be abundant. But of course, there's a flip side here. You can't overfish, and the fishermen are aware of that. So it's a constant struggle.
I'm sorry. Do you know how long ago this limit was set for the for haddock?
This is a new limit. It was for the fishing year, May 1st, and it would have reduced their commercial catch limit by about 84%. It's for this coming year. So in other words, the fishing year begins on May 1st, and there was a 84% reduction.
84% reduction from last year in what they are allowed to catch?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's based on science. They're trying to figure out what's going on in the fishery, but they don't want to, it's the thing is like you can't just wipe out species. You have to manage the species. So I think they understand, and fishermen understand it, and I think they understand it better than I do.
Yeah.
But I think the council said, we got to take some emergency action, not the city council, but the Fishery Management Council. We have a Fishery Management Council, which makes recommendations on the fishery and adjustments to the species management plan. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, I probably know will listen and we'll get a slightly larger catch limit, and hopefully it'll carry them through the end of the year.
Yeah. No, that's from what I understood, Joe Orlando caught. Well, you just already said this. He caught almost the limit, and it's not even May yet.
And he did well. We're not into the fishing year yet.
Yeah.
So he's got quota for this year. He's using up.
Okay. Right.
So there's a much larger catch limit for this fishing year, which is still ongoing.
Right.
He's going out and fishing, and he's looking. He's saying, like, I just did a half day's fishing, and I caught nearly my entire quota. I don't know how the quotas are set, but that was the message from really sort of the driver of this was Jackie Odell at the Northeast Seafood Coalition, which is based in Gloucester. and sort of bringing that to the attention of the council. There's other fishermen as well. They were seeing anecdotally the haddock is, abundant.
Mhm.
So, we'll see. Not overfish. Haddock is not overfished, but overfishing is occurring. That's the way they sort of assess the stock.
Okay. Well, I know you will keep us posted on that.
And I had a baked haddock from the Causeway last night to go, and I highly recommend it. It was very good.
Yeah.
Big portion.
That's the place to get seafood in this city, that's for sure. And yes, the portions are not slight at all. Yeah, they're great. Yeah, it's a great place. So do you want to talk about Stage Fort Park and the renovations there?
Yeah, I got an email from a Rockport resident who was kind of upset that we hadn't written about it. So I was going to be kind of, Mr. Wise guy, and I said to him, "Well, look, if you read our community preservation committee story, we sort of mentioned it in 2 lines about Stage Fort Park. Not going to fly." There was a project that's been ongoing since before I came to the Gloucester Times to redo the cannons area. And so I went looking into this, and it was discussed in January about how they're going to make the cannons area more accessible. They're going to make the path between the cannons. It's kind of, if you go to Sagewood Park behind the visitor center, you keep going out there were cannons.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So there were 4 cannons out there. They've been restored by Gloucester resident David Dow. Also, the project has also been spearheaded by the Stage Fort Park Advisory Committee.
Nice headline.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's good. I like the visual, Steve.
Yeah.
And I think the Rockport resident was upset because look, they're tearing apart the historic aspect of Gloucester and its 400th year, but the project's going to wrap up this year by late June, early July, and it should be great. There were some questions by Councilor O'Neill back in January, Councilor Tracy O'Neill, about how this impacts the fort and the historic aspect of it, but they did surveys. The Stage Fort Park Advisory Committee, DPW, they took their time. I think COVID also probably delayed some of this project, but the work's ongoing now. So look for it late spring, and it should be great. I can't wait to see it.
So they're renovating the cannons. That's a different project, right?
The cannons. They're restoring the cannons. That's been ongoing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But they also wanted to make the port area more accessible. The Lucy Davis pathway or walkway,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, that comes up from the Boulevard path,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a crumbling asphalt path. Now they're going to regrade that and make it a little more accessible to folks. So it's great. I think it's a great. Then I think eventually they're going to try to look at an entire project for Stage Fort Park.
Ethan, a quick question. Any timeline for the work on the path?
Well, yeah, that's all going to be done by late June, early July. That's all part of the project.
That's fast.
Yeah, and so the city is looking. I think they're been talking about a much larger project to renovate Stage Fort Park, which is it needs a little TLC. Beautiful park, love it, but they have plans to do some more work there. So we'll see how that shakes out over the next few years.
Well, I know the Gloucester 400 has at least one really magnificent event planned for Stage Fort Park this summer. I think it's the Cape Ann Symphony will be playing there, but people should go to the Gloucester 400 website to learn more about that. But
and this is the fort area. This is kind of like, it's very isolated. I never knew it existed. It's out kind of out on a promontory, and there were some mounds and they had some cannons set out there. So now they're fixing that. The rest of the park, the bandstand, that's you wouldn't know. There's work going on there now around the visitor center. You see the heavy equipment, but that's the other thing that the DPW did. Shout out to the DPW. They repaved Huff Avenue. Have you seen that? It's gorgeous. They put in a new asphalt sidewalk. They're going to put in some trees, some new trees.
Nice.
And it looks gorgeous. You go up there now. I mean, that's just 100%. And then the ice hockey rink also opened up. Not ice hockey rink, okay? The ball hockey rink.
Yeah.
Ball hockey.
Yeah.
So Young Legends Ball Hockey is they're officially open, and it's got the spoked B in the middle. They got an arrangement to have that. Blades came out on Sunday. So that's a really great amenity. So Stageford Park is popping. Also, the Rotarians also have a plan to upgrade the playground equipment as well. That's probably a story I should get on. Yes, but that's also part of this as well.
Yeah, it's a good city park. That's what it's turning into.
Oh, it's not just it's a Cape Ann. It's a resource for the region, for the North Shore. People come from all over to that park. They have barbecues. It's really hopping. Yeah. Great place.
Yeah, no, it is great. So before we run out of time, Ethan, you need to tell us about the city councilors and the mayor. They've got some good news in your paper today.
Well, not this present city council and not this present mayor. The city council voted for raises for the mayor and the city council starting in January 1st, 2024. That means that there has to be an election and they have to get elected if they want to get the pay bump. Mayor's salary hadn't been changed since 2014. It was $100,000, and the councilors had been making are making $11,500, and their pay was increased to $14,000. So so I think the point was made, and I think someone needs to tackle it on the council. In my opinion, they need to put in an inflation adjustment to these wages and have it be maybe every 2 years there's a slight bump, because it's just politically just bad. The council got a 22% increase. The mayor's position is getting a 15% increase. It doesn't look good. I mean, most municipal contracts are about 2.5% a year. So it just looks bad. So maybe they need to do an inflation adjuster. Maybe they could follow the Social Security adjustment. That seems to be a good measurement, or 2.5%, because we have Prop 2.5 every couple of years in it. But it's for the next council. Okay. But there was some talk about the mayor is the mayor CEO. They were talking. There was the councilor Tony Gross talking about, well, hey, we have a chief administrative officer. So that debate kind of got thrown around. But in the end, both pay raises passed.
Any sort of contention?
Huh?
Was there any? Tell me a little bit more about the discussion around that.
Yeah, I mean, residents didn't seem to be all that hot on the mayor's increase. One resident was sort of saying, hey, he's only been here for 2 years now. This is not about the person. It's not about Mayor Greg Berger. It's about the position. That was what Councilor Gillen was trying to say. And then it was, and then the council increase was a lot more favorable. Residents who spoke up during the public hearing really spoke in favor of the council, felt like they were doing a lot of work. Their meetings are very long. So that's the perception. That's reality. They all do a lot of work. Everyone's really working really hard. The mayor and the council are working very hard. Not an easy job. I wouldn't want their inbox, is what I like to think.
Yeah.
So that's it.
All right. Well, does anyone want to toss out stories you're working on?
Well, Steve's working on the path.
The path into the cannons, that I think territory.
No,
and then I just want to make a plug if you're around this weekend on Saturday, the Grace Center is having a community open house. The new Grace Center was at the Unitarian Church for a long time. Grace Center is kind of more like a concept that goes to different places, but it's to serve the homeless individuals, people in transition, disabled, people who are isolated. It's a great resource for the city. It's now on Main Street at 264 Main Street. Right up the street is the VA clinic, the courthouse, Action Inc. So it's really now sort of a one-stop shop for people who need help. The Action Shelter is only an overnight facility for homeless. So we're going to be previewing that for tomorrow's paper, for Friday's paper. So pick up the Gloucester Times.
Yeah, good. And this is permanent residence for the Grace Center?
No, Grace Center is a day program.
Yeah.
The way Action works is the Action Shelter is an overnight.
Yeah.
And then they open up the Grace Center for breakfast and lunch.
Okay. So, but this will be this at 264 Main Street. That will be their home for right.
Yes, this is their new permanent home. They came up from the basement of the UU Church,
Yeah.
and it was the old Moose Lodge. LifeBridge North Shore is the sort of the overall organization nonprofit that runs Grace Center now.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah.
Great. All right, Ethan. I'm sorry, Stephen. How about you?
Well, as Ethan said, I'm still putting the finishing touches on the Andrews Point story.
Okay.
I try to cover as many bases as I possibly can, talking to attorneys, politicians in Rockport, and neighbors as well. So it's close.
Good. Well, I really look forward to reading that. So thank you both for taking this time. We really appreciate it as ever. And I'll see you next week. Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.